All right, hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. I'm Thomas, and I do videos on educational matters, um, running the gamut. But we are in the middle of covering the reciprocal system of theory that was originated by Dewey B. Larson back in the middle 20th century and updated in the 21st century by Dr. Bruce Perret, Dr. KVK Nehru, and others. And this is a theory of everything that attempts to describe a whole theoretical universe based on simple premises, the main one being that the universe is made out of motion. Motion is the relationship between space and time. Space and time are identical to each other in their qualities, but they are reciprocals of each other in motion. And start with that, and then if this, then that, if this, then that, if this, then that, and so on and so forth until you have created a whole theoretical universe that, it turns out, matches up with the actual universe in over 90% of the scientific applications. And in the ones that it doesn't, it actually sheds more light on the answers to the problems that science is having, not being able to come up with things. Anyway, this is a complicated topic, obviously, but we're in the middle of going through one of Larson's speeches that he gave in 1986, just a few years before he died. And his theory was pretty much congealed at this time, at least in his mind. And it's the outline of the deductive development of the theory. So we're kind of going over his if this, then that development. And it's pretty hard sledding. You probably won't be able to start out this video right here and understand a whole lot. You probably need to go back to the beginning. This is number 7, or I guess letter G in terms of the outline of the deductive development. And then there's also some biographical stuff that comes before that here in this reciprocal system unit. But the main idea here is just to go over this and show how Larson's thought process works, how the reciprocal system works, and what are some of the issues that are involved. And we can get into the more of the details of everything as we move further along. So a lot of this is kind of for posterity to look at it later. But if you want to really look into Larson's deductive development, this is always going to be here. So you can kind of see where he's getting this stuff from. He's not just pulling it out of the air. Although if you read his book, sometimes it does appear that way. Okay, now we had just gotten done with reading paragraph 54, and that wraps up section A. So now we've just moved into section B. And Larson's about to describe where we came from and where we're going. Okay, section B. In the first section of this outline, the general characteristics of the motion of which the universe is constructed, together with additional information about the various forms and manifestation of that motion, were deduced from the postulates of the theory. With the benefit of this information, we are now in a position to develop the details of the individual phenomena in the various physical fields. We will begin by identifying the possible combinations of scalar rotations, meaning atoms and subatomic particles, and their individual characteristics, including the properties that are represented in the periodic table of the elements. As in section A, each statement is a deduction from the postulates of the theory or from one or more of the numbered statements earlier in the outline. Okay, number 55. As noted in statement 12, the primary motions are the framework or background of the universe of motion and do not constitute any physical activity in that universe. Physical activity, that is, meaningful change in the physical universe, results from motions superimposed on the primary motions. We will now want to examine the general considerations involved in such combinations of motions. First, we note that there are no restrictions on the combination of motions of the same kind in different dimensions. For instance, rotations in different scalar dimensions can combine by rotating around the same central point. Okay, number 56. The normal progression, both of the natural reference system and of the added motions, is a continuous succession rather than a combination of units of the same kind. As soon as one unit of the progression ends, another one begins. But the units in a succession do not necessarily have to be identical. For example, the 2-unit cycle of simple harmonic motion has the same initial and final points as a 2-unit segment of unidirectional linear motion, and therefore fits into the linear progression. We may generalize this situation and say that compatible units of a different kind of motion can replace units in the normal progression. It follows that compatible units of motion added in a dimension of an existing motion will merge with this previously existing motion, merely altering its magnitude. Formation of a compound motion, a combination that retains the distinction between its components, therefore requires the addition of an incompatible motion. Except where outside forces intervene, the added motion must oppose the original in order to achieve stability. Otherwise, there is nothing to hold the components together. The opposition reduces the net total magnitude of the motion, and since lower numbers are more probable than higher numbers, this makes the combination more probable than independent existence of the components. Statement 59. A numerical constraint on the combinations is imposed by the discrete unit postulate. Addition of two inward units of motion to the unit outward progression of the natural reference system produces one net inward unit, the limiting value. The maximum linear addition to a motion combination is thus 2 units. Number 60. Where the motion is n-dimensional, the maximum is 2 units in each dimension, a total of 2 to the n units. Okay, now Mr. Perret has a footnote here. In 3 dimensions, a total of 2 to the 3, 2 to the third, equals 8 units is possible. Not 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals 6, as the effect of dimensional motion is to double the prior number. In a single dimension, there are 2 possibilities, double for 2D to 4, and in 3D, double 4 to 8. Okay, number 61. Scalar motion is measured in terms of speed or inverse speed. As we have seen, however, the natural datum level is at unity, not zero. The natural speed magnitudes are therefore deviations from unity. A deviation downward from unity, or 1 over 1, to 1 over n, has the same natural magnitude, that being n minus 1 units, as a deviation upward from 1 over 1 to n over 1. In dealing with the basic scalar motions, we will therefore use the deviations rather than the speeds measured from zero. We will call these deviations speed displacements, abbreviated to displacements, where the meaning is clear. Now this here just kind of explains how Larson got his work cut out for him, because he has to come up with a whole new terminology, and here he's making a distinction between speed and speed displacements, and the speed displacement is really a speed that's applied to an already existing speed, and his combination in an emotion combination. And this is a kind of an awkward way to deal with it, which he probably didn't have any way to know that when he first came up with his nomenclature. But just as it works out, it's a little bit difficult to deal with. And so, that's another thing that makes Larson's theory very difficult to grasp, is some of the nomenclature that he uses, some of the terms that he adopts become problematic because they have other meanings, or they have a confusing meaning. They tend to obscure things rather than shed light on them. And, but at the same time, it's not really that feasible to just revamp the whole system and come up with different names for everything either. So that's another problem that the reciprocal system has at this point. I guess at some point it will need an entire revamping. I think that the best way to really do it is to just really somebody's gonna, hopefully, maybe it'll be me, maybe somebody else or whatever, will have to come along and really, really simplify this system. I think it's possible. I think there are just a few little things that are missing that would enable us to really kind of retool this system to make it very accessible, to boil it down to just very, very simple things. I've been doing research on a different subject entirely over the last couple weeks, and it's the same thing. This author has this very fantastic theory, very fantastic evidence and research that he's done, but he just kind of insists on making it more complicated than it needs to be. I think he's trying to present the material to a sophisticated audience, and so he's trying to speak in their language, which is convoluted, where he could have just presented it in a very simple manner that any intelligent person could understand. And I think Larson does the same thing. So I think more than anything, that's what is needed of the Larsonian system, is a revamping of the terminology and simplifying of the whole system. Okay, now we're back to number 62. Where quantities are reciprocally related, the choice as to which should be called positive is purely arbitrary. It will, however, be convenient to refer to the phenomena of our ordinary experience as positive. Since the speeds in our local environment are below unity, we will call a decrease in speed from 1 over m to 1 over n a positive displacement of n minus m units, and an increase in speed from m over 1 to n over 1, a negative displacement of n minus m units. Okay, so there's an example right there. He's got it set up right here. So when you decrease the speed, that is a positive displacement. And when you increase the speed, that is a negative displacement. So, it's logical. It makes sense the way he explains it, but it's just not something that, most people are going to, be enamored with when they come into the system trying to learn it, or, and maybe being a little bit skeptical in the first place. That's the perfect something to just get somebody turned off even more to the theory. Okay, number 63. The photon, as defined in statement 20, is a vibrating unit that moves outward translationally at the speed of light. As noted in statement 22, the frequency of the vibration is limited only by the capacity of the production process. The atom, defined in statement 33, is likewise a vibrating unit with an added linear scalar motion. But in this case, the linear motion is rotationally distributed over all directions, and the rotational character of the added motion imposes some restrictions on the numerical magnitudes. Number 64, a one-dimensional scalar rotation of the linear vibrational unit generates a two-dimensional figure, a disk. A scalar rotation of the disk around another axis generates a three-dimensional figure, a sphere. This exhausts the available dimensions. The basic scalar rotation of the atom is therefore two-dimensional. While no further rotation of the same kind, inward motion, is possible, the entire combination of motions can be given an outward scalar rotation around the third axis. This conforms to the requirements of statement 57. It is a one-dimensional addition to a two-dimensional motion, and those of statement 58. It is an outward motion added to an inward motion. Okay, here he's basically describing the constraints on a matter, so he's really saying that there are two-dimensional scalar motions, and that is the maximum that can be in an atom, because it's an inward motion on an already existing outward motion. And there can be a two-dimensional rotation, but there also can be a one-dimensional rotation, which is a rotation of the already existing two-dimensional rotation. So that one-dimensional addition is optional, whereas that two-dimensional motion is needed for the atom. Okay, number 66. This would be the last one. The vibrational speed displacement of the basic photon may be either positive, meaning less than unity, or negative, meaning greater than unity. For the present, we will consider only those combinations in which the basic vibrational displacement is negative. We will call this system of combinations the material system. The system based on the positive photon speed will be called the cosmic system. Okay, so we're looking at, there are really two kinds of atoms. There are material atoms and cosmic atoms. The material atoms are the atoms that we're familiar with in our system. The carbons and the oxygens and so on. But then there's also this cosmic system and cosmic atoms. And these cosmic atoms have to do more with intelligence or consciousness phenomena. So we'll get into that later. But right now we're focusing on the material system. And that's where the basic vibrational displacement is negative. Okay. Stick with it. This is difficult stuff, but it's just building and introducing the terminology. We'll get to some applications here later, but we'll be back tomorrow for more. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.